First off, Stevie, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. Going back just at the beginning when you came to the Baycats back in 2015 or 2014, I should say, what went into that decision to come back to the team?
Well, just like as a small clarification, when I came back in, I think it was 14. I didn't actually want to leave the first time. Like if most people that were around on the team at that point know that I actually tore my Achilles prior to the season. I was playing in a charity basketball tournament, and at the time, the GM before the trade deadline wanted me to be able to run, which I wouldn't be able to do. So that's what prompted me leaving, and then going to play for Brantford. But coming back, it was just one of those things where the majority of childhood friends, life friends, and proximity came into play. But all that came into consideration when I make that decision. Because as fun as it was playing in Brantford, 2.5 hour drives at 11 o'clock at night will get to you, especially when you have to wake up for work the next morning, right?
Right. Yeah, and you come back to the team, and obviously you guys go on that run, and then 2018 comes around, and it was a bit of a struggle for you guys early on. I think the Panthers were in first place for the longest time, and then you guys got Garces, you guys got Rodriguez. Did that kind of change for you guys once you added those two players halfway through the season?
Well, we've always prided ourselves on just competing, and for a little bit we're light on pitching, but we were never out of it. I know Kitchener had a really strong team that year. They had some good pitching. I think that's when they had one of their best batch of Cuban imports to come through. And then it just turned into we were looking for someone to help out or shore up. Obviously Starling came in, and he was a shot of energy. And then with Frank, there's not too much you can't say about Frank. He was lights out. And funny story is, throughout the year, Frank was always good. He was a big leaguer for a reason. And there was a situation that came up where Frank came out of the locker room one game and he said, "You know what, guys, I'm going to try tonight." And that was the night he pitched against Brantford. And I think he probably punched out 14 or 15 guys that night. So there's levels to that. So yeah, Frank was definitely an injection. But like I said, the regular season was never the end goal, or was never the end goal for us. We always wanted to dogpile. So we did our best to kind of hold strong until that came up. And then, lo and behold, another playoff run came along and we did what we had to do.
Yeah, the third guy that you guys added that deadline was Tim Smith, who you had a relationship with going back to college. How big of a role did you play in bringing Smith into the Baycats?
Well, Tim Smith, just to go back a little bit further on the college role, we played together 1 year in Texas before he went to ASU. And Tim's always been he's always been a baseball bro. You can just put that at the simplest point. He's always down to play. He's always going to give his 100%. And he's always, as he always says, he's for the boys. So Smitty was one of those things where Angus reached out to me and asked if I knew Tim. And first thing he said was, "Is he going to be a good fit in the locker room?" And I was like, 100%. Tim Smith is not one to cause any type of problems. He's always a good spirit. He's a team player. And then I think I texted Tim a couple of times and just said, "Hey, how do you feel about playing or playing for a ring?" And I think he said he had to think on it. And then a couple of days later, we heard that Smitty was going to be on the team. And he's just a baseball it's kind of weird to say, but he's like a baseball historian. He eats, lives, breathes baseball. So to add him onto already a pretty good roster was, definitely another shot of life in the arm.
Yeah, and then you guys make it to the finals. You face the Panthers again, and game one comes around, and Atenza almost no-hit you guys. What do you remember about that game, and how shocked you guys maybe were that Garces lost that game? Not that he was responsible for that loss, but he still lost his first game as a Baycat that night.
Well, you know what? I can't say that Frank lost that game. Right. Not to take anything away from Kitchener, but Noelvis, he is a competitor, and we always pride ourselves on, we can get into other teams' heads, just the little chirps, the little approach, how your swagger on the field. I think a lot of that was like some like the Baycat mystique, if you want to call it. Like you talk to 90% of the players that we played against, everyone just said how confident we were. It wasn't cockiness, it was just, you know, an air of confidence. But Noel, he got under our skins. He brought his Latin flavor. He did what he had to do, and like, hey man, like we can't say anything, but he shut us down. He pitched like he was supposed to, and he's always been a good pitcher. It's either like it's the battle of, is he gonna beat himself or is he gonna beat the other team? And that night everything he did or everything he threw was good. So it wasn't a shock. It was just one of those, well, like, hey guys, we got to strap up the boots a little bit tighter. We got to go back to work. No one was down. Like we weren't, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world. But it was just one of those where like, you know what, they're here to play. You know, strap up and let's get ready for game 2.
Yeah, and when you look at Atenza, he was obviously a great pitcher, but he was also had a show to him as well. Were those some of your favorite battles back then, just going up against Atenza, especially in the playoffs, knowing how not only was there a battle on the field, but there was also a bit of a show happening as well?
Well, you didn't want to get shown up by him because if you got a hit off of him, he acted like, you know, oh my gosh, like what's going on? Like, you know, this can't be. Like, how did you do that? But if he got you out, you know, like it was always, there was a show, there was a dance, a shimmy. He'd say something, like he'd yell on the mound. He had a little bit of Mark and Stroman in him. So you didn't ever want him to beat you in that sense. But like, it's funny you say like more than just the competition on the mound or on the field, but off the field, he was the biggest 6'3", 240 teddy bear that I got to know. Like he was humble about it, but on the field, that was his stage. So as much as it, like I said, he did what he had to do to win. And I believe that like the second you start yelling and screaming at him for get back on the mound, stop showing people up, he's in your head and he's partly won. So kudos to him on that. And
Yeah, and then,
just like the Kitchener battles in general, they were always good. Like I've known some of these guys since I like came back from college, and it's always been a, hey, you know, call it like the Coyote and Roadrunner episodes where when the coyote clocks in and there's that sheepdog that guards the sheep and all that stuff. It's like, hey, how's it going? How's it going? But when the clock hits, everyone's ready to go, and like you don't really have friends at that point.
right. And maybe the most iconic moment was that game 6. Not only did Sterling go deep and do what he did, but 2 batters beforehand, Jackson hit his home run, helmet comes off. What do you remember about that postseason run by Jackson, who, it wasn't just that series, he was obviously brilliant for you guys throughout the entire postseason?
Well, Jackson, if I remember it correctly, I think Jackson got off to a slow start, and during the regular season, not the playoffs, because on the playoffs, if you threw anything south, he was hitting it. Jackson got into the playoff. He got into playoff action Jackson mode, and he was just doing his thing. And Glenn is just energy. It's a ball of energy. Sometimes, you know, it's you get shocked by it when you're not expecting it, and sometimes, the majority of the time, it's going to be where you want it to be. So like, Glenny always did his best to keep even keel. He was a man about it. He'd let off some steam, come back, he'd be like, I'm focused. So throughout that whole playoff, just to watch him, he went from nervous energy to confidence to put me up there, I'm going to do something crazy. And I remember when Glenn hit that home run, probably the fastest, most aggressive sprint around the bases I've seen in a while. But when he got back to the dugout, like it was just a release for him. Like he had tears in his eyes, but it was just one of those, you know, those good releases that Glenny had every so often. And you know what to say, I was proud to see how he was handling it, proud to see how he did. And then obviously he got crowned the MVP of that playoff series, or just the
And
playoffs in general.
before I ask you about Sterling, I remember that game was a little bit tense for you guys. I remember there was a couple calls that didn't go your way, and the one thing Angus always says is that he doesn't think there's anything that can phase you guys. For that game, I could kind of sense that, you know, the tension was building heading into that Sterling home run. What do you remember about that game? Because I think there was actually a moment where you took Brian's iPad and even showed the fans a play that was, I think it was safe for you guys, and it was called out. So what was that moment like, just leading up to that bat flip by Sterling?
So game 6, I believe it was.
Yeah.
A 3-2 lead is you know, you don't want to go to game 7, regardless of what it is. Like you obviously, we got there. We're not afraid of anybody, but you don't want to, you know, play with fire. So the game started off, and if I remember, like it was, you had your home field loving, you want to call it, and there was call after call. And for the most part, you'll hear it from us. Like most of the guys on the team are veteran enough to say something and then let it be, but it kept piling up. And then there was, I think it was a play at home, or it was a tag play or something I think it was a play at second actually. And then somebody got in and it wasn't even close. Player stood on the bag, didn't know what was going on. The umpire's like, you're out. And then, it kind of escalated from there. It's just the little things that build up in the game. Like we try our best not to and it's not like it derailed everything because clearly we stuck in, but it's just one of those things. You don't want someone, or you don't want to just let the other team know you're going to roll over and, let that stuff go. It has nothing to do with the umpires. They're going to make their calls. We're not trying to intimidate everyone. It's just about letting the team across from like, we're here to fight. Like that might be a right call. We're not going to roll over and let them have it. It might be a wrong call. You know what? We're not going to roll over and let them have it. But it's just a matter of us staying in tune and just letting that person know, even though you got called out, hey, we're here. Keep going strong, keep hustling. The team's always going to be behind you.
Right. I think Sterling would have made that bat flip no matter what. And I only think he was on the team at the time of that game that you pitched against the Panthers earlier in the season. But I know there was something that happened in that game with the hit and ball trick and what have you. Did that moment play at all factor in, being in the back of you guys' head for the rest of the season?
Well, it's stuck because just to let people that don't know, like I think we showed up with like 7 players, position players, and 2 or 3 pitchers. And I think we went through if I remember, I think it was either Santos or Emily that was sick. And then Nags had I think something was up with his finger. And then I got called in the pitch. And you know what? It is what it is. Like, in baseball, there's some like unwrittens, call it the baseball player's rule book. And there's some things you just don't do. And then just so happened, it wasn't a hidden ball trick. There was a home run hit off me. Whoop-de-doo, like I'm not a pitcher, but it was just a count. Like a 3-0 count most of the time when you don't have a pitcher pitching, especially when you're up by like almost 2 touchdowns, most likely you take that pitch and then, next pitch, if it's there, do what you want with it. Ball got hit out. Guys were celebrating, and we were all like, dude, you guys realize what's going on? So, like, throughout the year, we said it right from then. Let it go. Say your bit, and then we'll hold on to that. And then I guess Starling got filled in later on during the year, but that bat flip, regardless of if that happened back in May or June or whatever, it was going to happen. Tensions were building, and it just so happened Starling was hurt. So the whole jog around the bases thing, like everyone's like, oh, he did it because he was trying to show up to the other team. He wasn't. Starling was hurt. I think he might have hurt himself more with how high he launched that bat after he hit the home run. But that home run was just like that, the pimp, the whatever you want to call it, that, once again, no Elvis will, yell at you and tell you how much you suck at the time. And then Starling did that to make up for it. Not to say right, like 2 wrongs make a right, but it was in the moment. And you know what? It happened. I would never tell him to go back and do anything else different because that's how he wanted to celebrate. So, I mean, it was just a lot of emotion built up, and then that's how it all ended there.
Yeah, and if you look at bat flips, I mean, sometimes teams will do a bat flip in June, and it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. But if there was ever a time for a bat flip, do you not agree that would be the absolute pinnacle moment to do it, especially in a league like this?
All I'm going to say on the bat flip situation is some people are old school, some people are new school. But the majority of the pitchers on our squad said, you know what, if I throw a ball and you hit it 400 plus feet, you can do whatever you want. You can take your pants off and run around the bases for all that matters. If that's at home, I don't think the drama is as high, but because he did it in another park, there's a little bit more tension. But like I said, in that situation, I don't think it's planned out. If it comes to you, do it. I mean, if that's what makes you feel good, if you feel that's right, if that's your game, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and you're I think the only player to get ejected in that game from just the benches clearing afterwards. Not that anything, truly happened afterwards. But what do you remember in the absolute aftermath of the home run? And I guess after you finally came across home plate and pushed Gardner.
I remember Jeff Cowan saying some things, and then I got dumped because of that. But you know what? Thank you, Cowan. Love you. No, it was so when Gardner pushed. When Gardner pushed Starling, I think Brantley was actually on deck, or there was someone closer to the whole situation. And then the benches started clearing out. And as my witnesses on the field, I was not trying to instigate anything. I ran out there and I was pushing people back. And then there was a little birdie that chirped over my shoulder. The umpire turned and looked at me and said, "You're gone because you're trying to instigate stuff." And I'm like, I didn't even say anything. But in the heat of the moment, you just accept it. I still got to watch the game. I kind of, snuck back around and was hiding below in the dugout, in the bullpen. But you know what? It wasn't anything big. People got tossed. Like you said, like we were saying, emotions at that time were at an all-time high. So, yeah, things are going to escalate. And you know what? It's part of the game. Like our commissioner he's done a really good job to kind of eliminate that. You don't want to see it happen, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to be the last person off the bench to help my teammates out if something is going down.
Yeah, and obviously Ken ended up capturing the bat flip, and I think he held on to it for like 3 days. And then once he finally posted on Twitter, it went all over the internet. What do you remember about just the reaction, not only within the league, but honestly, like worldwide, basically?
So a couple of things. I told one of my friends that works at Sportsnet, I'm like, "Hey man, you need to take a look at this clip. It's gonna go crazy." And he literally had it on a couple days later, and then all of a sudden it was in New York. There was ESPN was airing it. The Dan Levitar show had it, and it was just a cool thing just to see, people's reactions. Like you literally had it split down the middle where half the world was like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. If he hits a ball that far, go ahead and pimp it." And the other half was pitchers and like old school guys going like, "There's no way he makes it around third base. If I'm the catcher, I'm meeting him there." But it was just a cool thing. And at the end of the day, all you kept on hearing was from the Intercounty Baseball League in Ontario, from the Barrie Baycats of the Intercounty Baseball League in Ontario. So it was polarizing, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure like for whatever it's worth, the league got its 10 minutes of fame. So it was incredible because as much as you think of it, like we know about it, like in our group chats we're talking about it, guys around the league are like messaging you going like, "Hold on, what happened, and you're telling the story. All of a sudden you open up Twitter and it's the #1 trending thing on Twitter. So it was pretty incredible.
Right. And also, that was one of 9 championships that you won in the IBL. When did it click for you, I guess, is a question that what was happening with you and just the streak that you had was something that the league has never seen?
Well, you know what? I never, I don't know how to talk about this too much, but I would never go and tell people about it because it was just one of those things where I feel like I was fortunate to be on some of these teams. Like when I went over to Brantford that one year, like I legit pinch ran. For the most part, it was a luck. Like it was me talking to a baseball, like lifelong baseball friend, Mark James, where I was like, "Dude, I need a place to play. I just got released." And he's like, "All right, I'll talk to Banano." And then next, Banano's calling me. He's like, "Hey, we don't need you until August in the playoffs." And I was like, "All right, I'll be good by then." And then, that kind of rolled into that. Next, coming back to Barrie, like it was just one of those things where you learn so much being in that atmosphere. And I tried to bring a little bit of that over. Rolled into 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. And all of a sudden people are asking me like, "Hey man, like how much has it been?" And you can ask anyone. I've always said, "I don't know. Don't know, couldn't tell you. I think it's like 2 or 3. That's where I've left it." But it's a humbling thing. Just to be on, or like I said, just to be fortunate enough to be on that many good teams. And the big thing has to do with chemistry too, right? You don't realize how much of a team chemistry or just having a positive mindset, like a family vibe in the locker room, will change how you play on the field. So like the day I got over there in Brantford, like I remember my first game was in London. I showed up and everyone was giving me hugs. "Hey man, what's going on? Heard about this." Like tell me about, like it was instant, like, "Hey, we're having a party. Come do this, come do that." Like it was a mesh situation right away. And then we had that in Barrie too. And then like talking to, I know some like the guys like Angus and DeGrace, you probably hear them mention a lot that it's a family feel. Like we still talk nonstop. We still, have our relationship. So like just that, I think if I'm going to take anything away from those 9 championships is just realizing or just understanding how much, ultimately having like a family core, just a family feel benefits that team, and it also changes how you are later on in life.
Right. I guess the one championship that you can take a lot of credit for was the one in 2013, because if I recall correctly, you had a big hit in Game 7 against the Baycats. So maybe that's the one thing. That's the one. But my last question for you: you mentioned it being a family. What has being a Baycat meant to you over the last? I think it's been what you've played for the teams for 7 seasons, I guess. Just what has it meant to you over the last little bit being a Baycat?
Well, it's one of those things where like we have a group chat, and Officer Adam Haas messages every morning saying, "Good morning, family. What's up?" And there's a group of us that way. We have a WhatsApp group that's always wild at times, and I think like just the last years that we've been part of this, it's grown from like it's just like family is the one way to describe it. Like, yes, my birthday was a couple of days ago, and like I think everybody in that group like personally sent something out, or we have memories and pictures together. It goes from the players to the wives. Like we're all close to the kids. Like I'm pretty sure all of Bissell's kids, I can go up and like just in the middle of the day, just be like, hey, what's up? Spatty's kids. Carolyn just had a kid. Like our old trainer had a kid. Like she's still in the group. Like so, it's just one of those things that's turned into an extended family or a second family. So it just I think with most of the guys not coming back, minus the guys who are playing somewhere else, it just turned into like we didn't need the baseball field didn't have to be the common space anymore. Whereas like we were okay with Friday night Zooms with the COVID situation, or just talking in the group chat. So family's just been the biggest thing that has kind of grown or just developed over the years, and that's probably going to be the biggest takeaway. I know the championships are great, being at the field was great, but like when life after baseball continues, like this will be the biggest takeaway for me.
Thanks, Stevie. I really appreciate you doing this, man. And not only this, but all the chats we had over the years. I always appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you too, man. Not a problem.